Welcome, Pewter Report readers, listeners, and viewers, to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast, Energized by Celsius. I am John Ledyard from pewterreport.com on a wonderful Victory Monday, and Scott Reynolds, also from pewterreport.com, is joining me today on the show. And it's an interesting show, Scott, because it's exciting because we're talking about the Bucs and the playoffs and another win and Tom Brady's MVP candidacy, but then there's also this fact, Scott, that Antonio Brown no longer with the Bucs, and that's obviously going to dominate a lot of the conversation that we have today on this show.
Yeah, no doubt about it, John. It's certainly been a whirlwind 24 hours for the Buccaneers, and the crazy thing is as I wrote about in my 2-point conversion, which is now on pewterreport.com. You know, we said it yesterday. I've never seen a player go from hero to villain as quickly as Antonio Brown did within the Bucs community. But his absence on the field, once he left, the Buccaneers scored 18 straight points, and a new hero was born in Cyril Grayson. And listen, time will tell if Cyril Grayson becomes anything more than just a footnote to this game. Right. I'm not saying this guy's going to be, the starting caliber player, whatever, but he's at least performed to a reasonable degree these last two games, really stepped up and played consistent football when the Bucs have needed, with 81 yards at Carolina and 81 yards in place of number 81 yesterday at New York. So it's from a storytelling standpoint, it's certainly an interesting juxtaposition where, this team loses AB, but essentially gains Cyril Grayson. Certainly not anywhere close to the talent level of AB. They're going to miss AB. There's no doubt about it. And we're going to get into that, John. How does this team move forward without AB and, of course, without Chris Godwin entering the playoffs?
Right. And it's all going to be brought to you by our friends over at Celsius, obviously. Celsius powers active lives every day with essential functional energy. I've got the peach vibe here. I had it yesterday, too. No sugar, essential energy. It accelerates your metabolism and burns body fat. Not only are they the best tasting energy drinks, Scott, but they're good for you. They don't have any of the bad stuff you'll find in a lot of the other energy drinks. And so
that's why there's no crash, John.
Yeah, there's no crash either after it, which is great. And honestly, look at the amount of flavors that they have: strawberry, guava, wild berry, Fuji, apple, pear, orange, orangesicle, tropical vibe, peach vibe. There's so many different flavors that they have. You can check them all out, by the way. Go to Celsius.com. You can see what flavors they have and what stores they have at near you. And you can also use the banner ads at pewterreport.com to find out more about it, or do the Amazon subscribe and save option as well, and get Celsius coming to your house with regularity so you can enjoy these tasty, wonderful beverages. All right, Scott, let's dive into the Antonio Brown saga in terms of what we've learned today and just offer some of our final thoughts on this. I know some people probably don't want to talk about this all week, and we don't plan to, but we need to talk about it today. It's a huge news across the NFL, and we're still figuring out. So we've got to talk through it and dispel as many of the false narratives as we can. And I think you and I are pretty much on the same page with a lot of this stuff. But this word comes out today, Ian Rappaport's out there saying Antonio Brown was actually hurt, and they were trying to put a hurt player back in the game. And oh my, Antonio Brown actually he was angry about that. And Bruce Arians gets up not unexpectedly to either of us and says, I have no idea what you're talking about. Brown never said anything about being hurt. That's not surprising to us, considering he was warming up at full speed. He gave it a go Saturday and wanted to play and was active out there. He was warming up full speed and going crazy out there. He looked great when he was out on the field, and he ran off the field just fine, jumping up and down in the end zone, waving to everybody. So I don't know.
To me, that kind of destroys the narrative, right? That it was about his ankle, if he's kind of hopping and skipping and jogging off the field.
And it was clear from Arians' presser today when he was asked that at the very beginning. He was like, I don't know what you're like, that didn't happen. Like, that was just not brought up on the sideline at all. That wasn't a part of the discourse. And so people could choose who they want to believe. Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying track records here is on one guy's side.
Bruce Arians,
I think so. I think that, what I appreciate about what Arians and Tom Brady have said is that they are, Arians is not going into detail about the specifics of the conversation between Ian and Antonio Brown. And people don't like that, because people want answers. And they act like Arians is like, they're entitled to answers from Arians for some reason. Yeah. If you want to argue that Arians should be entitled to answer for moral reasons as to why that team sign Brown in the first place. Maybe you can argue that, but it's a separate
Right.
conversation to me.
It is. You're right.
You're asking why Arians should be, you're entitled to answers from Arians about what happened on the sideline in that game. You're just not. I would love to get him too, but if we don't get all
Right.
the answers from Bruce Arians about what happened on that sideline, that doesn't make Bruce Arians a liar. It just makes him
Right.
a head coach who doesn't dispel everything that happens. And that's his prerogative. He has that priority if he wants to take it.
You're right.
To not dispel it. And Brady is the same thing when he gets up there. He doesn't have to talk in detail about his conversations with Brown that may or may not have happened during that game. Yeah. Neither of those figures on this organization are beholden to having to say more than they've said about the subject of Antonio Brown. And part of that, Scott, might be out of respect for Antonio Brown and what that guy's going through, which I think was indicated by both of them saying, not going to go into details about it. I hope that he reaches out to people and has people around him that get him the help that he needs. Like, we can read between the lines a little bit here and just say, like, they don't want to talk about it in depth because this is part of it. And it's personal in their mind for Antonio Brown and what he's going through.
You're exactly right. And there's also another component to this too, is that there's going to be a grievance filed, right? I mean, there just is. And so anything that's said in the public, whether it's at a press conference or on social media or whatever, is or in an interview like Bruce Arians had with Peter King, is evidence. It can be used when they have those special masters at the NFL where they try these types of grievance cases, and so guarantee you the Bucs are collecting everything that AB is doing and saying on social media, and AB's camp, whether it's attorneys or his agent or whatever, is doing the same thing with regards to press conferences and all those stuff too. So whenever money's involved, you can bet that the lawyers are going to be at work at this. So there is another component to this too, John. I think you're right. I think that Brady and Bruce Arians do have some compassion for this guy, and they'd like to see him get some help. And it appears, if you followed AB on social media with his antics with the legal realm that he's been entrapped, or not entrapped, but entangled in his own doing, not entrapment, but there's something amiss here, right?
Right.
And I think that the other element of this is the legal aspect, because this is not over. The Buccaneers, to our knowledge, and even Bruce was asked today, is he going to be released? And he said that's a Jason call, and we've put some texts into the powers that be at one Buccaneer place at the Advent Health Training Center, and it's kind of the same thing. It's they're debating whether they want to put him on a suspended reserve list or if they want to cut him outright. I'll remind some of our older viewers and Buck fans out there that the Buccaneers did a similar thing with Keyshawn Johnson in 2003 when he and John Gruden had several heated blowups, including one on television during the sidelines of a game. Keyshawn Johnson was suspended by the team for the last couple of games in the 2003 season for conduct detrimental to the team. The difference is when you're suspended, you still get paid. And when you're cut, then obviously you don't. So,
yep, that is the difference. And that is a key difference. And we'll see if the team factors that. And obviously being at the end of the season, perhaps that isn't as big of a factor to them. I don't think they think any other team's going to pick them up. We certainly don't think that. But we'll see. Terrence Davis says, I just feel like people aren't talking enough about the top NFL reporter totally contradicting a coach on a huge issue like this. He's speaking, of course, of Ian Rappaport. And people may not be talking about it that much, Terrence, but for people like Scott and I, like, there's just not much to say. Like, we know Ian Rappaport gets his information from agents and from Antonio Brown's agent in this situation.
Two sides to different stories.
Right. And they're going to do what they got to do to spin the story in their favor. So there's not much to say. It's not like this is the first time this has happened before. It's happened before. Rappaport and Schefter both do this. You just got to read between the lines.
I got caught up in a similar type of situation. And reporters, listen, you're going to get information from two different camps with two different viewpoints on whatever subject matter this is. This is obviously AB and what transpired yesterday. I remember distinctly what happened back in 2013 with Josh Freeman, right? I was having conversations with Josh Freeman's father about what was being said from that point of view, from his camp when he got suspended and ultimately released by Greg Schiano and Mark Dominic. And then I was getting news right from Mark Dominic and Greg Schiano. So it's like you're getting what you would think are credible, reliable sources. I mean, it doesn't get any better than those two people, because Josh's dad almost served as like a pseudo agent for him, very involved in Josh's career. And then it's just a matter of what do you report, who do you believe, that type of thing. And
Mhm.
a lot of it's just he said, she said, and usually the truth is somewhere in the middle.
It is often, and in this situation, there's the added layer of the history with AB, the recent history with AB, which matters. It'd be one thing if this stuff was 10 years ago, but the recent history with AB has pretty much just been troubling across the board. And we know of little things that happened last year in the in between offseasons, things like that were not like so concerning, like don't re-sign this guy or don't have this guy be a part of your locker room at all, but
Yeah.
we're concerning enough to know that like AB's complete like he didn't do a complete 180 from the player that flamed out of New England and Pittsburgh and Las Vegas and all this, but
Yeah.
like that we knew that hadn't happened, so
Right.
it wasn't that this was totally shocking, to be honest. It was a little bit shocking that it happened in a game against the Jets. I think I said to Britt before the game, it was that morning. I was like, this should be one of the more uneventful games of the year. Like, probably won't be anything crazy that happens. And then you have like all this stuff. I just didn't expect it to boil up in a game against the New York Jets.
Yeah.
But AB getting to this point, yeah, not surprising at all to someone who's been around him for a good bit of his career. Not surprising to me at all that it came to this. And so some people in the chat are saying, AB's yesterday's news, let's move on. Let's talk about the ripple effect and how the Bucs are going to win another Super Bowl. And we are going to talk about that for sure. Yeah. But this stuff also needs to be addressed because there's a lot of layers to this in terms of figuring out like, hey, is the team trustworthy? Is the team handling these situations right? And I understand the fact that even though I think you and I feel very confident in saying that, this is AB's situation, that's where the blame is to lie. I think we need to address that and talk about that because there are some people that are like, wow, the team, I don't know how, but they seem screwed over AB and things like that. And, this is just who this guy is. Like, this is why it's such an issue and why I don't believe he'll ever play in the NFL again now is because he's been with, think of the coaching staffs he's been with. Like, let's forego the Raiders situation, but like Belichick and Arians and Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
Like, those are probably like three of the best situations. I mean, in terms of like people and relatability and like being, even Belichick, who wouldn't be described as a player's coach, but like people go there and buy into the culture. You know what I mean? And he, that's like, and obviously that situation, he never really got a chance to fit there. But the two biggest indications are this and the Steelers. And you're talking about two coaches who are, players, coaches, whatever that even means.
And the thing is, even John Gruden never said a disparaging word about it. And Antonio Brown wanted him desperately. I mean, he saw him as a huge playmaker, right? And I know that.
And everywhere he's going, he's been slighted. That's how he paints it, is that I'm the slighted one. And he creates the narrative for that to take place. And so, I just think, here's what I really, on a football perspective, Scott, the Bucs are definitely worse. Like, there's no question. We can't get around that. We knew that when they signed him. We knew they were better a football team with him there. We didn't know how the other stuff would play into it.
And John, to this day, I think there are still players that they're so close to the playoffs and the Super Bowl. They would love to put up with AB's antics for a couple more weeks, right? I'm sure that there were some Buccaneers out there that probably feel that way.
I'm sure
that they wish they could wave a magic wand and not have what transpired happen because they know that they're not going to be as good of an offense without it.
Right. But here's the thing. 100% believe that if it hadn't happened Sunday, it would have happened this week in practice. It would have happened. It was going to happen. That's the thing.
Exactly.
You're not talking about a one incident guy with AB. You're talking about a ticking time bomb. You wrote that today, 2-point conversion. I think it's spot on. Like, that's exactly what it is. It was going to happen at some point. It was going to happen. And it was going to happen because this is who AB is. This is the decisions he makes. These are the bet that he makes to lie in. And so that was going to happen at some point, whether it was this Sunday or not. So I don't disagree with you that some players are like, wow, yeah, he really helped our football team. Everybody knows that. Arians knows that. If you ask him, like, that, obviously that's going to hurt. Would he rather play Brashad Perryman or Antonio Brown? I'd rather play Antonio Brown, and everybody would rather see him out there. I do think players are going to understand why the situation happened, as it happened. We've already, done some digging, talked to some players, and I think that there's a general consensus from what we've heard among some players is that like this was not totally surprising to everybody in terms of they just sense that at some point it might get to this point, and how bad it would get and how quickly it would get bad. We don't know, but that's a big part of this too. And I think that the on-field part of it is something that we're going to talk about for sure for the rest of this podcast, probably for a lot of it. And we'll talk about Brady and Sorrell Grayson and some of the better stories too. But off the field, man, like, I fully believe, and I think this matters, that the Bucs have one of the highest character, best locker rooms in football. I really believe that.
And John,
And
it
now there's no
actually,
asterisks, and I like
yeah,
that.
exactly. It is gonna say it actually got better
Yeah.
without AB in it for that reason, because you kind of have to walk around on eggshells with this guy. Maybe not the players, maybe not his teammates, but some of the coaches for sure, right? And some of the staff members because of the guy's attitude. And
Yeah.
uh, now I don't think there's any more of that. I think for the entire building, there's probably a sense of a bit of a freeing feeling from this, just because you didn't know when the time bomb was going to go off, right? That was the
Right.
thing. It's like you got to walk on eggshells, you got to say the right things, you got to treat him a certain way. I mean, listen, even Bruce Arians called the guy a diva a couple of years ago. Now, did he want him on team? Yeah, because he's a good diva, right? And he served his purpose and he served his role. That's how it is. William Butler, we appreciate that super chat very much. Listen, and Francisco asks, as AB being officially released, when is it official? It'll be official when the team decides it to be. There's no timetable. They can do whatever they want, or they can not do it at all. They can just simply put him on the suspended reserve list, carry him the rest of the season. He won't count against the roster. So eventually they're going to need that roster spot to bring up a player, maybe a running back. We'll talk about those injuries in just a second, John. But it's up to Jason Light and Bruce Arians when they do it. I suspect that they have to kind of look at the situation and say, okay, well, is there an ankle injury? I mean, Bruce Arians was even today kind of saying that there really wasn't an ankle injury.
Yeah, I mean, at least not to the
which
point
was
that
interesting.
Yeah, like he was saying, at least that Brown wasn't expressing that to him on the sideline. That like, oh, my
Right.
ankle's acting up and I can't go back in the game. He said that was never
Right.
taught. He said Brown never. He said unequivocally, he interrupted the question to
Yeah.
say no, absolutely no. He never said that he was injured on the sideline. Like that never was communicated to me on
Yeah.
the sideline by anybody in this conversation. So.
Yeah.
That feels like that checks out based on the things we were talking about earlier about him running around and all that stuff and the way he was playing. And also it checks out because like, obviously if you're AB's camp, you got to go back and like find a narrative that works here. And, you know, after this all blows up, and we'll see. I mean, I think the biggest thing is people are searching for like logic in this like, why did AB leave the field then? I don't know that it's going to make sense. AB did things that didn't make sense. His whole exit from Pittsburgh like made no logical sense. There was nothing he in his mind. He felt like people were out to get him, and
you're right. And
that's how he feels.
I don't know what was said between Arians and AB, and honestly, I don't care. He had no right to act the way he did and quit on this team, because ultimately that's what he did. Right? Those are his actions. He has to own that. And I don't care if he was benched. The rest, there are plenty of ways to handle things, and how you handle things in life is everything. And because you're going to get some bad news, you're going to get some news you don't want to hear or whatever. And a lot of the times it's sometimes it may not be in the manner the which something is said or the phrasing or whatever. Sometimes you just need to hear it, and you need to be able to an adult about it and handle it the right way, and not be a child and take off your jersey and wave to the crowd and put on a big show. But as you said, John, that's AB.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And people trying to find doesn't smell right, doesn't make sense. It's not going to. Like he's just telling you he doesn't operate in that way. Like it doesn't have to make sense for it to be true that it happened with him. And so that's where we're at. Common Sense asked a good question here, and we'll move to this part of the show now. John and Scott he wanted to know basically, do we have any like thoughts about like the replacing AB, and can the offense change without many weapons left? This is where it gets totally interesting, Scott, to talk about this, because Bruce Arians' offense has kind of always existed with a lot of like talent at wide receiver. And now he's got 3 tight ends that 2 of them have kind of underachieved this season. Brady had a good catch the other day. Hopefully he's moving in the right direction. Gronkowski was outstanding yesterday. I mean, one of his best games of the year, no question about it. Those guys are kind of like now the strong position and running back and wide receiver are totally depleted after leading the way for most of the season. Totally depleted. And I personally believe this, and this is where we'll start the discussion, because Mike Evans is like the key figure here, right? Like he's the guy that's left. Arians, good news with him today. Evans said he felt great today. So no, it didn't seem like anything got worse yesterday when he played. And so hopefully he's good to go now. And we'll see how he practices this week and everything. But didn't seem like he aggravated anything with the hamstring, which is big because they need him. But Here's what's so important, Scott. Mike Evans, and I get the final drive and it worked, and I'm glad that it worked in the final drive, but it worked against the freaking Jets, and it's not going to work in the playoffs. If you just say, oh, Mike Evans is going to get double covered, we'll throw to Cyril Grayson and Tyler Johnson and Rashad Perryman. That's just not going to work. I'm sorry. It's not going to happen.
They don't have the track record.
Exactly right. And here's why the loss of Godwin and Brown, in my opinion, hurts from an on-field perspective more than the loss of Evans, because those guys can move all over an offense. Yes. And you can get them away from double teams, and you can scheme them touches, and you can do all of those things. But what Evans does best is going to be getting vertical, and you can take that away easier as an opposing defense than you can take away things that Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown do. So in my opinion, it wasn't just that they lost two of their best 3 wide receivers, but it was that they lost their 2 most versatile.
It's the kind of receiver
touches. Let's find you production receivers where you don't have that as much with Mike Evans to the same degree. Now, what are they going to do, Scott? That's my question to you. What do they do? Do they continue to say, all right, Mike Evans, you're going to be what you're going to keep doing exactly what you've done, and we're not going to change anything about your role. And everybody else is going to step into these other roles, and we'll figure out ways to get them touches. And if you get double covered, we're going to go play these other guys. Or are they going to say, no, to heck with that. We're not doing that. We're moving you around, Mike Evans. We're going to get you the football, and you're going to be our guy still, no matter what. We're going to put you in the slot. We're going to ask you to do crazy things you've never done before. What do they do? What do you think happens?
I like the fact that if the Bucs have to do that, Mike can do that, because it was Mike Evans and the miracles for the first couple of years in his career. Vincent Jackson, of course, was the Bucs' 1,000-yard receiver, and then Mike Evans was drafted in 2014. But then Vincent Jackson was just getting a little long in the tooth, and quickly Evans asserted himself in that second year in 2015 as the Bucs' top weapon. And then Vincent Jackson, I believe, left after the next year, got injured, and was basically done. And Chris Godwin didn't come along until 2017, and even Godwin wasn't Chris Godwin as a rookie. So I think that the Bucs are used to, or I should say, Mike Evans is used to playing that role of, get Mike 12 targets a game, because he's been in that role. So I feel comfortable in the fact that he's used to that. There are some limitations in this offense, though, especially with what you're saying, regards to Evans being a different body type with a different skill set. And I think this offense lends itself a little bit better to Chris Godwin types and Antonio Brown types with the type of routes that are run, et cetera, in the way the defenses can also defend and take away Evans, which we've seen.
Yeah.
I have said, and I'm going the long way around to answer your question, because I really don't have a great answer, to be honest. I'm curious as to see how Byron Leftwich is going to come up with this. And he's really going to earn his paycheck. Not that he hasn't already, but listen, when you've got the embarrassment of riches in your offensive arsenal, it makes coaching a lot easier, right? It's easier to coach stars than average players. So I'm going to be interested to see what type of chess player Byron Leftwich is in moving around these different pieces on the board now that he's had a couple of key pieces taken off the board. But I go back to this, and I think I've said it on the podcast with you, John. I know I've expressed it to our friends at WDE on our radio appearances. I go back to this offense's ineffectiveness at the Washington game, right? That was a marker that stuck in my head, that the Bucs scored 19 points in a 29-19 loss at Washington. And I've always said this team has 4 big weapons: Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, and Rob Gronkowski. Bruce Arians, Byron Leftwich, Tom Brady can function with 3 out of those 4, right? If it's all 4, look out. You're looking at a 30-point plus game.
Right.
But if there's 3 on the field, they can still win, be very productive, and take it to teams. But when it's only 2, that's where problems set in, right? And that's a game where they didn't have Antonio Brown, they didn't have Rob Gronkowski. Mike Evans had 2 catches for 62 yards and a touchdown. That was a 40-yarder late in the game that they needed, but Mike Evans really didn't do much prior to that. Chris Godwin had a very pedestrian day: 7 catches for 57 yards, averaging 8.1 yards per catch. His longest was 15-yard catch. He was targeted 8 times. Evans was targeted 3. So that to me is a game that has stuck out like a sore thumb. And guess what? That's what they're going to be faced with in Week 18 and the first round of the playoffs. And if they go further, is how do you deal with only 2 out of the big 4 remaining?
Yeah,
And that
and
was that was a game where they had Leonard Fournette too, John.
yep,
And Fournette in that game was targeted 9 times. He had 8 catches for 45 yards
yeah,
and ran the ball for 47. So he actually had
and
a
we don't
pretty
know if he'll be
decent
back.
day. Don't know if he'll be back.
Right. We did get some good news on the running back front. Giovanni Bernard, Bruce Arians said we didn't know if he'd be back this season, to be honest. But Bruce
Yeah.
Arians said today, unprompted, that he has his fingers crossed for Bernard to maybe get activated this week
Yeah.
and play this week. I don't know if it happens this week, but even if it doesn't, let's just say it doesn't happen this week. It seems reasonable to assume he'd probably be back for the first round of the playoffs, which
Right.
again is big. Now, I will say this: Le'Veon Bell and Keyshawn Vaughn have done a great job in pass protection. That hasn't
Yeah.
been talked about enough.
Yep.
But they've both been great in pass pro. Looked great yesterday. I checked the PFF grades just to make sure I didn't miss anything live, and they had graded really well in pass pro. And Vaughn has really just in general. So I think that's a big element to this too, is just what they're able to do in pass protection and leaking out his receivers. Vaughn caught both his passes. Bell looked good catching 2 passes. I mean, obviously he's very unathletic at this point, but it is what it is in terms of that stuff. So yeah, you just hope you can get by with that. Then the key is going to be, Scott, just getting away from this ridiculous pass or run first down philosophy, because you can't keep doing this when you don't even have your backs out there. Like, these guys have barely played this year. You can't go into games with Vaughn and Bell and just be like, yeah, we're gonna pound it like on first down. And because you put Brady, I mean, Brady was in so many bad situations yesterday. And it was the Jets, and that was part of it, but he just got them out of so many situations, whether it was the players around him with penalties and drops, or whether it was the coaches with, again, they just weren't going anywhere in the run game all game.
One of those was Cyril Grayson's 20-yard catch on 3rd and 20 failing him.
Yeah,
So
that was a huge play.
It was, yeah.
And another seed from Brady on that throw, who was great. And Eric Flynn brings up a good point here. Eric, we appreciate this $7 super chat a lot. He says, if Rodgers sits out and Brady has a monster game with his supporting cast, 350, 4 touchdowns, no turnovers, could he steal the MVP? I mean, I don't know if it's stealing at this point. It feels like they're both neck and neck to me. I mean, Brady has like over 1,000 yards more than Rodgers, and he's thrown like 5 or 6 more touchdowns. Yeah, like, he's 44 years old. He's it's ridiculous to me. I mean, again, I think Arians and Leftwich are good coaches for sure, but LaFleur might be the best coach in the league. Like, I mean, you can look at the numbers. They have the numbers say, like, the average distance of a defender from a receiver for Green Bay is like, they're in Kansas City, or like the top 2 teams in the league. And the Bucs are, in the top 10 maybe, but they're like 9th or something like that. And they just scheme people open constantly. Like, Rodgers, people are like, oh, he only has 4 picks. And that is good. Like, I mean, Rodgers is not going to put the ball in harm's way a lot, but he's put the ball in harm's way just as much as Brady has this season. Brady's just had the worst turnover luck ever. And Rodgers, I mean, he's had absurd turnover luck, and Rodgers hasn't not. And so, look, they're just going to go out by the box score, and we'll see how it shakes out. I really don't know. Both guys are probably deserving with how they've played. That's how these things go.
Yeah, and the thing is, if the Buccaneers had won like 10 games and the Packers had won 13, and you could point to the fact that Rodgers led his team to 3 more victories, I mean, maybe that's fine, but they've got 1 more victory, right?
Yeah, one
more victory. He's got 1,000, I think 1,100 yards less, 5 less touchdowns. I mean, I'm a huge Aaron Rodgers fan. I like the guy. I've appreciated his game for a long time. He's an outstanding competitor. One of the best throwers and quarterbacks.
Oh, yeah. He's made some great plays this year, but even if you ask PFF, like, who should win it, I mean, if you go by that for quarterback grading, there will be no qualms for them in terms of, like, Brady's graded higher for them all season long.
Right.
And he's also leads their wins above replacement too. He's the top player in the league in terms of in other words, without him, this team would be this much worse. He's like the leader in that category, which obviously should matter when we're talking about most valuable player. So do I think Rodgers will win it? Maybe at this point, sure. Yeah. But it's going to be really close. And
it's going to be interesting, right? Because there's obviously, with Aaron Rodgers and his situation with COVID earlier this year, right? That was a little bit of a spark, in the national media, right? Just because of the controversy around, him not being forthcoming with it regarding his vaccination status. So there's that little asterisk there. Then there's also the asterisk of Brady fatigue, right? He's 22 years in the league. Unless you're a Buccaneer fan or a Tom Brady fan or a Patriots fan, you're probably sick and tired of Tom Brady, right now, just because, like, people they always want to see what's next, what's up and coming, and this guy's still doing it and still better than the Patrick Mahomes and the Joe Burrows and all of this, type of stuff right now.
That has to matter at some point in this MVP conversation. The fact that he's 44 playing at this level. Now,
I
if
agree.
he was statistically behind people, then like I would say, okay, we got to chill. Like
Agreed.
it's cool, but it doesn't make him an MVP. But the fact
Yeah.
that he's statistically ahead of everyone
Right.
and 44 years old, like that is, I mean, he made probably 4 throws that he had 4 big time throws
Yeah.
for PFF
Yeah.
just to pass his 20 yards or more in the
Yeah.
last game.
I
Like,
mean, like that sideline throw to Grayson on 3rd and 20. The
yeah.
ridiculous throw down the chute to Gronkowski in that window
Yeah,
was
that was
just crazy.
right.
The 33-yard dart to Grayson to win the game with 15
Right.
seconds left. I mean,
Yep.
it's just crazy, you know. We
Right.
appreciate all these super chats. Matthew, $5. BA, Gruden, and Tomlin are all players coaches. The Pats, not so much. We have 4 bad franchises, and all 4 are wrong. He left his team while in battle. Listen, the people that are in AB's camp, you're going to be in AB's camp, and this guy can do no wrong. I get it. Okay, I do. I get you.
I don't.
But you can. Well, I mean, I don't agree with you, but if that's
Right.
your opinion,
You understand that those people
Yeah.
exist.
Yeah, you're entrenched in that battle, and you're going to die on that hill, and that's fine. But guys, AB is not coming back. You can flood social media all you want. You can say the Bucs need to do this or they should have done that. It doesn't matter. He's gone. He's gone, and he's
Right.
gone from his own volition because he didn't have to handle that situation the way that he did.
Right.
Period.
So how does this team move forward? Like that's the real question here. And I'm not sure what the answer is with Mike Evans, but I think that what they decide to do is probably going to determine how this thing goes, along with how Mike Evans plays. Like he has never been a versatile player. He has a defined skill set and he does that thing, those things very well. Like, but he's never been a player who's going to move around, run the entire, like run every single. And now he has become more of that player under Arians. They have done a good job of saying, we are going to do this a little bit with you. But when they have their full complement of talent, they are pretty content to say, okay, if you're going to get doubled all game, we're going to go to Chris Godwin, or we're going to go to AB, or we're going to go to Gronk, or we're going to go to the backs underneath. That's how they've coached this whole season. And that's how they coached last season for the most part as well. They just said, okay, if that's what's going to happen, we're going to go to our other guys. And late in the game yesterday, that's what they did. And it worked against the Jets. And I just don't think it's going to work against better teams when they get into the playoffs, Scott. So they need to figure out what that's going to look like. Are those other guys, like you said, AB's not coming back. Chris Godwin's not walking through that door. Right. So you have to figure out how you're much of a focal point you want to make Mike Evans. Are you going to use him like the Packers do Devontae Adams and things like that? I mean, he's not that kind of player after the catch, which does inhibit this thing. You're not going to be able to get productive offense by getting Mike Evans manufactured touches. You can do that. I mean, like screens and smokes and quick hitters, things like that. You could do that with Godwin and with AB. It's not going to work with Mike Evans if you try and do that stuff. So it's going to be it's going to test their creativity with Mike Evans to see what they do.
It is. And the thing is I don't think the Bucs offense is that particularly creative. The most creative I've seen the Bucs play calling been all season long was the first drive of the Giants game. I about fell out of my chair. I was losing my mind, right? When they did an end around to Mike and an end around to Chris, then they went up tempo. You're throwing RPO to Brady. I mean, a play action touchdown pass to a wide receiver screen, which is a new wrinkle to Chris Godwin, with Brady out there blocking at the 5-yard line. I mean, I was blown away. I'm like, where's this been, and why can't we see more of this? Right? I give Byron Leftwich all the credit in the world for that drive. I just want to see more. So maybe they do have to get a little bit more gimmicky like that. And you know what? I've got no problem with gimmicks. Right. I mean, look at the Braxton Berrios touchdown down there by the goal line. It counts. It counts just as much as the 4-yard fake to Mike Evans. Right. The touchdown's a touchdown. So if you got to be gimmicky and outsmart some people, go for it rather than just trying to win straight up and do it old school.
That's a big part of this, Scott. You're spot on because it's a huge part of this. The Packers do that kind of stuff. They are, they'll rely. I'm just sorry, not just the Packers. Let's go outside of that. The Chiefs, a lot of the top offense in the NFL. Whether it's the screen game and being complicated with the screen game and the Bucs can do that. They've done that. We haven't seen as much of it recently in terms of the backs and the tight ends, especially. Right. But they pulled that out in the playoffs. They hit some, I think of the screen to Gronk that was a huge play in the end of the Packers game.
Agreed.
Set up a field goal late in that game. I think that was a huge play. So
and speaking of that Packers game, I mean, as big of a play as the touchdown was to Scotty Miller, right? That little end around toss to Chris Godwin on the last play of the game to pick up that key first down was something the Packers weren't expecting. I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, they have stuff in their repertoire that they're going to have to pull out now, but you have to lean on tools more than players. Like that's going to be
Exactly.
so
Yes.
important, whether it's play action, whether it's motion, getting guys the ball quickly out off the snap, getting the ball out of Brady's hands quickly. Because if you start to run a ton of downfield, slow developing routes with the receivers at your disposal right now, it's just not going to go in your favor all the
Yeah.
time. And so they need to be able to mix up all of those ideas and we're going to get to the run game in a second, but have those be effective enough and use them on early downs. You got to go play action on early downs and stop
Right.
getting in second and third and long, because it works against the Jets.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's not going to work against the Saints type of
That's right.
it's not going to work against those. Cowboys are, I think, are the number one pass defense in the league right now, and the rushers that they have. And even Green Bay's got several guys they can get to they got 4 guys they can get to the quarterback. And Philadelphia, I mean, Philadelphia has 4 or 5 guys. Let's talk about because Philadelphia is the team we're looking right. I mean, that's the team that Tampa Bay is, I think, 80% chance that they face Philadelphia, according to ESPN's FPI model, which is pretty good. And honestly, when you run through all the scenarios, it's like, yeah, they're most likely to face the Eagles in the playoffs. That it makes the most sense that's going to happen. Whether it happens as the 2 seed or the 3 seed, they could face them as both. The Eagles is the 6 or 7. That both could happen. So when you think about that, you think about how the Eagles defend. Yeah, they're going to make you go underneath. They are like absurdly obsessed with preventing big plays, like probably more than any defense in the league. And so that's where it would be so helpful to have a Godwin and AB, and you don't have those guys now. So you have to change.
And also too, John, Leonard Fournette, right? Because if you're forced to throw the ball underneath and check it down because of what they're trying to do with the back end in terms of cover 2 or 2-man, then you've got to have a competent pass catching back. And you know what? I was encouraged to see Keyshawn Vaughn catch 2 of his 3 targets yesterday. I mean, I've been a guy that's been critical of his pass catch, and you have too, but all we're doing is taking snapshots, John, right? If you have a bad game, we take a snapshot, we talk about it. If you have a great game, we take a snapshot and talk about it. That's it. So if you don't like the last picture we took, then take another one and we'll talk about that. And Cyril Grayson's a prime example. And, the one thing that I will say about this is Tom Brady, and you go back and look, and I'm no Bostonian, and I'm not a Patriots purveyor of their football lore and their history with Tom Brady. It's probably need to have Mark Schofield back on and kind of talk about Brady dealing with receivers, that are kind of unheralded because he's had his Troy Browns, he's had his Randy Moss, he's had the Edelmans, and the Wes Welkers, but there's also been in a couple of key games some unheralded guys that have stepped up and made plays. And I think what's encouraging for the Buccaneers heading into the playoffs is you've got Brashard Perriman with the walk-off touchdown against the Buffalo Bills, someone who you can at least point to and say, all right, he's been there and done that. We might not see it, this week or next week or whatever, but at some point in time, he's made some plays. And listen, I was down on Tyler Johnson yesterday after dropping that touchdown on the drive that led to the field goal instead of the touchdown. But he kind of redeemed himself in my eyes, hauling in 3 or 4 targets for about 40 yards, including a key 27-yarder to get across midfield. And what that did for the Buccaneers that didn't have any timeouts is the closer you get to the end zone, the further, or I should say the closer the offensive linemen have to run to the line of scrimmage, right? So you conserve some time that way.
Right.
So the fact that Grayson has made some big plays for Brady, the fact that Perriman's made some big plays for Tom Brady, I don't think we've maybe seen the last of Scotty Miller. He's got a history that Brady can dig into from last year, the big catch in New Orleans, the big touchdown at Green Bay.
That's interesting.
So there's enough players that have made plays for Brady where Brady has helped make these guys. And that's kind of my point is Brady has helped make these guys. And so they have Gronk and they've got, Evans. It's just a matter of finding the hot hand, whether it's Perriman like it was against Buffalo, whether it's Grayson like it was yesterday. Maybe Scotty Miller has his turn on the Wheel of Fortune wide receiver wheel, coming up. We'll have to see.
Yeah, we will. I don't know what's going to, I don't even know Rashad Perriman's role now. Is he just strictly behind those Evans, Grayson? And, I don't know. He played 11 snaps yesterday, but he could have been because he came off that COVID list. And so maybe he wasn't all the way back, or I don't know. But the 11 snaps for him. When the other guys, I think Grayson played 47, Johnson 49, Evans 56, I believe. So even Evans only
Yeah.
played about 70-some
You know,
percent of
and
the snaps.
this is kind of what I'm talking about here. And again, I'm no Patriots historian, but they don't beat the Jaguars in 2017 without Danny Amendola in the game. Who they were without,
Yeah.
I guess, Gronk and Edelman in that game. So that's what I mean. Brady has a history of leaning on these unheralded guys like he did yesterday. There's no reason to think that can't continue in the playoffs. The Brady magic can continue.
I agree. I mean, I think this scheme is different, and that's the first thing people got to understand. Like when you talk about things Brady's done in the past with players who weren't that great at receiver, you have to understand the differences in scheme. The Patriots did other things well with those guys, but to be honest, they didn't do a lot of the big play, a lot of the things that this Bucs offense is built on in some of those years where he had lesser talents at receiver. When he had those talents at receiver, Brandon Cooks and Randy Moss, they made tons of plays down the field.
Right.
So it really depended on your personnel. What New England did so well was they just adapted to whatever personnel they had. That's why they changed their offense so many times while Brady was in New England, and why it was so silly when people were like, oh, I don't know if Brady can run Bruce Arians' offense. He can run any offense once he learns the terminology.
Right.
There's no question about that. And so I think that's going to be the key for people to understand here. We're going to go back to the past a lot and say, oh, Brady won it with these guys. And I get it. I don't think Brady needs to start but I think in this scheme, it matters. Like this is a different offense. And so in this offense, it's way more scheme related than Brady related, in my opinion. You get in a game like the Saints. Yeah. Like you need talent to win the game, no matter who, it's going to be a tough matchup if you're playing with Danny Amendola, like, and you're and Chris Hogan, and you're the Patriots,
right?
Because you need talent to be able to, against a team that can man cover with four guys, that most teams can't do that. And the Bucs probably won't see a team that can do that in the playoffs or will do that in the playoffs. So that kind of take that out of the equation. I'm just saying schematically, the Bucs are going to have to change some things because it doesn't really matter for Brady, but it's going to matter for his options. Like his options only are what they are in a given play. And if two of the guys on the field, are guys that have a history of kind of route running mistakes and don't, we saw route running mistakes yesterday from a lot of players. And the one thing about Godwin and AB is that they just don't make those mistakes. Like there's two of the smartest football players in the league and the most reliable, consistent football players in the league. It's hard to say that about the other guys that are out there right now for the Bucs and the way they've played this season, and so I think that's where it really matters moving forward is how many more self-inflicted mistakes. I'm going to go through and show in Bucs briefing on Wednesday. I'm going to go through and show y'all how many self-inflicted mistakes that the Bucs had in this game, and yet Brady overcame them. It wasn't just the penalties, but I'm talking about route running stuff, drops, things like that. Hard to continue to overcome those when you face better teams that are going to give you less opportunities than the Jets. So again, but I'm not saying it's not impossible. I'm just painting the picture for people to understand the context compared to past Brady teams and the onus being way more on the coaching staff, in my opinion, than on Brady. Like Brady is the one I'm not worried about the variables. Exactly. I wouldn't say I'm worried about the coaching staff, Scott. It's just, this is a totally new uncharted territory for them.
And it's right on the brink of the playoffs. They're going to have to be more creative going forward because their standard of we're going to out-talent you, their talent's been cut in half, the wide receiver position now.
And maybe they try to move Mike Evans all over the place and they say, we're so committed to making you do you're going to be our guy. And he just can't do it. And maybe he's just terrible at it. And they did what they had. They tried something to get their best playmaker the ball and it just didn't work. The guy that they had left and it just didn't work. He didn't deliver. And then, okay, these are Evans' limitations. I mean, maybe that's the case.
The one thing, too, is we're limited only by you guys out there not clicking the subscribe button and getting us to 7,000. We're over 6,500 now, thanks to you guys that have. So if you are watching this show, whether it's live or whether it's on the podcast version, and you haven't subscribed to Pewter Report, it's free. Like all you have to do is hit the subscribe button. That's it. Go to Pewter Report TV on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Then when you're there, make sure you click the like button for all of our videos. We greatly appreciate that. Helps out our algorithm for YouTube and gets more Buccaneer fans in front of the Pewter Report podcast to get this insight and analysis that we feel you don't find anywhere else. John, to your point about Mike Evans, especially in the red zone, and I think that Byron Leftwich needs to understand his piece as well and what's going to happen and have some anticipation, right? Chris Godwin is a red zone threat, right? We know that Mike Evans is because he's got the touchdowns to prove. He's got 12 touchdowns. He had 13 last year. He's the preferred weapon when it comes to the red zone. So now without an AB, without a Chris Godwin, this is the guy that Tom Brady trusts that they're going to have to really rely on because he's not going to get the double coverage. He's going to get single coverage. And we know that even when he's single covered, like that catch yesterday, he had a defender blanketed all over him, and Brady put the ball right where Brady needed it, which is right in the gut, right between the 8 and the 4, and Brady held on to it for a key 4th down touchdown. If they don't get that touchdown, they don't have enough time to get the ball back without points on the board in that situation and win the game. That was a huge play by Cam Brate. We've seen Brate step up. He has not had a great year. You and I are both in agreement about that. But we've seen Cam step up when it matters most, especially in the playoffs last year. That touchdown to Green Bay, or at Green Bay, the 4 catches for 80 yards against Washington. That was a big one, a pleasant surprise.
Yep. No, you're right. No question about it. Cam Brady is a key figure. I'll talk about another key figure in a second. And I'll get to Robert Super Chat here in a second too. I want to address this real quick. Cali Bucks, John wasn't here in 2016 or 2018. Evans needs to show up also so John can witness a one-of-a-kind receiver. I do respect that, Cali. And I obviously watched a ton of tape of my whole, all those years. And so I've seen Evans, especially in those years, and I've seen the kind of dominance that you're talking about. And I will just say this, since that time, you have seen a dramatic shift in the NFL in taking away big plays down the field. At that point in time, almost everybody was playing a ton of single eye coverage. So outside receivers had one-on-ones all game. The shift in coverage has changed things, which is why Arians' arrival in Tampa Bay, in my opinion, and the involvement of Godwin has been able to, in a lot of ways, keep alive the Evans streak of 1,000-yard seasons. Obviously, he's good at what he does. There's no question about that. But what he does in volume usually doesn't happen against most teams in the way that they cover, especially against the Bucs these days.
And John,
so they've got to take advantage of those opportunities when Evans has them. He's also, they've made him more versatile. He's played in the slot some more. But I think the big thing the Bucs fans need to understand when they're like, Evans got to be the guy, going back to when he was the only receiver in this offense, he was the clear-cut only number one guy, and he did everything. Well, coverages are different in today's NFL than they were even 4 or 5, 6 years ago. And that matters too.
The quarterback was different. Who was the quarterback in 2016 and 2018?
That would have been
Jameis Winston. Right. Yeah. So what did Winston do that Tom Brady does not do? Winston threw jump balls. Tom Brady does not throw 50-50 balls. He really doesn't. Why?
Tried to yesterday. But.
Well, yes. But what I'm saying is he does not throw the high volume. It's not efficient. Exactly. They're called 50-50. He doesn't want that percentage, even though you've got a 6'5" guy that can elevate like Evans and make some ESPN highlight reel catches to go viral on social media.
Right.
That's what Buc fans are used to. But the problem is, for every one of those plays, how many interceptions did Winston throw? Right? Mm-hmm. Those weren't on the highlight reel for Mike Evans. Those were on the low light reel for Jameis Winston, right?
Yep.
You don't remember those plays, but I do, because I covered this guy every single game he's played in since entering the league in 2014. Yeah. Mike Evans caught a lot of big-time catches and big-time touchdowns by going up and getting it. The problem is, the only time Brady feels confident throwing those balls is the 4 and 5 yard variety down there, like what you saw on the Jets game. Those little back shoulder fades and those types of things in the red zone. You're just not going to see Brady chuck the ball up 50 yards down the field like Jameis Winston did and pray that Mike Evans comes down with it, especially, John, like you said. Now it's not one-on-one. Now you've got a safety and a cornerback.
What you won't see is him throw it when the safety's looming. You won't see that. I actually I'll disagree and say that I think when he gets one-on-ones with Evans, he's throwing it up. We saw it yesterday. I mean, but he'll take those shots.
But not with the regularity that Jameis Winston did, because so many times Jameis was banking on Evans, bailing him and the Bucs out of a drive and being risky. And that's why this team, this team got rid of Jameis Winston, the 31 touchdowns to 30 picks. So many of those picks were on passes going to Evans, and Evans was at fault for some of them, but he wasn't on others.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be, Brady's going to give Evans, I think, a lot of chances to be the guy. I really believe that he is if he gets single coverage. But again, if Evans is doubled, you're not putting into double coverage. You're just not very often. So
that's a smart play. That's
exactly
where the coaching Brady comes in. Yesterday.
Right.
0 targets for Mike Evans, 0 targets for Rob Gronkowski. Why? Because the Jets wisely rolled coverage their way. That's why Tyler Johnson was one-on-one so much. That's why Cyril Grayson was one-on-one down the stretch. That's why out of 9 passes, 5 went to Grayson and 4 went to Johnson on that last drive, because they were the guys in single coverage.
And that's why it goes back to, I think, what the coaching staff does is just so important with Evans. That's going to be the determiner here. Ben, I know you want to know about the film and the run blocking on film. I haven't gotten to the All-22 yet. I will start watching it tonight. So while I'm watching Ben Roethlisberger's last home game at Heinz Field. Probably, if I can stomach it. We'll see how it goes. But I will start watching that tonight, and I'll get a look at it, and maybe I'll have something in Bucs briefing about it because it's been a problem the last couple of weeks, no question. They need to get way more consistent in the run game. It's just not been there. And so we'll discuss it again for sure. I want to talk about one guy, though, Giovanni Bernard. If he's coming back, you mentioned Cam Brate is a guy that needs to step up. And I agree, they're going to be playing more 12 personnel, I'm sure. It's just going to be the way things go for them. And they need him to be a guy that wins one-on-one against the lower level matchups that he's going to get. The other guy I think is Giovanni Bernard.
Yeah, totally.
And why I think Arian's saying that he might be back soon is a low-key kind of a big deal for this team. Yeah, because I think if this offense is going to step more into what they need to be now, I just think he's a big part of that because you have a guy in Giovanni Bernard who could step into the slot and he can do some of those things that they're asking him to do. And he can run some routes from the slot, and he's a more versatile piece in terms of being a receiver than what you're going to get from anybody else. I mean, Leonard Fournette's probably going to be asked to do some of those things too, and Le'Veon Bell, he is what he is as an athlete, but he does have that experience. And so, we'll see. I don't know if he's going to be part of the equation or not, but I think Bernard at the very least could be part of the equation in terms of how do we manufacture offense without some of our get the ball to this guy's hands so he can make something happen after the catch. They just don't have that. Like, where do the smoke screens go? Is it Tyler Johnson? Like,
I jogged your memory about that Bucs Washington game, right? In terms of how the Bucs worked with only two receivers, right? They're two big guns, Godwin and Evans. They were without AB and Gronkowski that game. I'm going to jog your memory again. Going back to another loss. Sorry, I don't want to dwell on the losses here, but the 34-24 loss at Los Angeles. Go back to that game. Remember the impact Giovanni Bernard had in the fourth quarter. He was targeted 9 times more so than any Buccaneer. Actually, I take that back. He was targeted 10 times. He had 9 catches for 51 yards, including a touchdown. He had a 32-yard catch and run on a screen, and also scored a touchdown where he ended up getting hurt in that play. But my point is that's the only time we've really seen an extended dose of Giovanni Bernard. It shows you what he can do. It's just that we've seen Leonard Fournette in that role a little bit more often, right? But Giovanni Bernard has that in him. We saw it in week 3, and the Bucs might have to pull a similar performance like that out of Giovanni Bernard, maybe this week or certainly in the playoffs.
Yeah, and even this week, Scott, I mean, if they win and the Rams lose the 49ers, which they already did once this season, this is a situation. And the 49ers are fighting for their playoff lives, by the way. So it's a huge game for them. And, the Rams are going to be I guess maybe they're fighting too. So it's going to be a huge game. Yeah, and no question. And so the Bucs,
if you missed the memo earlier, we had on pewterreport.com, the Bucs have moved the game against the Panthers to 4:25 from 1:00. So,
right. And so that will matter for sure in terms of, I think, all the playoff deciding games are in the 4:25 window. They just moved all the meaningless ones to 1, I think, and all the playoff ones. So Robert Farmer, the $5 super chat. We appreciate this, Robert. You're always hitting us up for some super chats, and we appreciate that. He says, I don't understand why Scotty can't get any snaps. It's odd. I'm not trying to say he's going to be the Hall of Famer, but come on. And he's saying, come on, because look who's out there. It's not like there's a lot of really talented guys. And the bottom line is that they just believe that Tyler Johnson is a more versatile player, and they believe that Cyril Grayson right now is a more versatile player. I mean, Cyril Grayson he stepped into that, do some of the Godwin blocking things, and he's not been very good at it, frankly. Like, he's not a great blocker, but he at least has a little bit more size, and he is physical. So he will try, to do it, and maybe he gets in somebody's way, and that's the rationale. They've also just asked less of the receivers in the blocking game, which is probably smart. But that's part of it with Scotty. He's basically Mike Evans' backup, and as long as Evans is out there, Scotty's probably not going to play that much. And even if Evans isn't out there, there's a chance Scotty's not going to play that much, like against the Panthers, So because they just feel like they like the other guys a little bit more right now. I also disagree. I love to see Scotty get more reps, but it's not like he's helped himself a ton the few times he's been out there either.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Ted Curtis, we appreciate all these super chats too, by the way. It's a great way to bring in the new year. If you haven't read our content at pewterreport.com, what are you doing? Get over there. Not right now, because you're watching.
We got a ton.
We have a ton of stories up there today, including a new 2-point conversion, John snap counts earlier in the day. Ted Curtis, obviously Evans and Godwin are amazing, but aren't burners like Grayson and Perryman. Are there any scheming opportunities to tap into their speed? We kind of talked about that. But the interesting thing is AB is a guy that can separate, right, with his quickness and his start-stop ability, and he's got some wheels too, even at age 33. But Perryman and Grayson, they're fast, and so is Scotty Miller. So it's not like the Buccaneers, have got more possession guys coming in to fill these roles. I think I would say Tyler Johnson's more of a possession type guy, but they do have some speed to work with. If these guys can get open, we saw that with Grayson with the 62-yarder at Carolina. That's a big play waiting to happen, is it not?
Oh, it is. And Grayson's ability to bring that to the table is great. But that's one of the things that was encouraging about this game, is that he made other plays rather than just a splash play here and there down the field, But it's still big. I mean, if you can create splash plays, the problem is splash plays are less predictive than, especially when you're like an every down player. Now it's going to be a little, defenses know what you're about, the key on you, they know what your game is. And so it is going to be a little bit probably more difficult to get those. But I still will roll it out. I mean, he has good speed, and obviously I think his awareness down the field has been really impressive. Like I said yesterday on the show, his awareness on that back shoulder throw for the touchdown, to throttle down and sit there rather than run into the safety.
Yeah.
And to know to look for the ball back shoulder while that safety's closing. I mean, if he doesn't do that, that ball's it's like this. Brady just laced it in there, and he knew where it was going to be. And I think that was a huge part of that play working.
Yep. Matt wants to know, John, can you give us a review of the AB's new hit song? I don't even know if it's a hit, but I know he's got a new song.
I will never hear that song. I can promise you.
I won't either. It's not on my playlist.
No.
Steve Munoz, shout out Cam Brady for being the third all-time in Bucs history for TD receptions. That's right. He is for right now. Chris Godwin's going to pass him next year. But yes, Cam Brady has been one of the best red zone threats. Light hits home runs in the draft, but signing undrafted Brady out of Harvard has been good. And I agree. I mean, it's a quality signing by Jason Light and John Spytek. Actually, back in the day, it was John Robinson. Who was Light's top right-hand man. So yeah, that's definitely, they've had some good finds, not just in the first round with guys like Tristan Wirfs and Mike Evans, but they've earned their money. In some of those late round picks and then the undrafted guys.
Right.
Speaking of money, John. Not fare too well heading into the new year with my bookie. I admit it. I got the Bucs with the points yesterday. They won, but didn't cover the spread, and I lost big there. I was one of those people thinking that the Bucs would manhandle the undermanned Jets. It was not that way, but they still got to win. But listen, if you're looking for an easy New Year's resolution, make your goal to double your money and get a head start with MyBookie's deposit match bonus. All you have to do is use the promo code PEWTER.
I think we lost Scott. He got booted out. But all you got to do is use this promo code PEWTER for MyBookie. You can win up to $1,000 first deposit bonus from MyBookie. It's great stuff. It's a great opportunity to put some money in your pocket, especially here. We got the playoff games coming up, and this is going to be a good opportunity to get in there with MyBookie and win some money in the playoff game. Scott, John, I know we lost you for a second.
Technology is great when it works. But listen, with the extra dough in your account, you're ready to bet on the biggest games of the week. MyBookie's got all the action. As John was talking about, don't drop the ball. Double your first deposit up to $1,000 using the promo code PEWTER. Head to MyBookie, place your bets, ring in the new year with the win. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.
Sounds like good stuff right there, Scott. And guess what? If you are interested in saying, hey, I'm going to give my sound mouth and give my voice, my opinion on these topics, you can jump into Spotify Green Room. You can talk music, sports, and culture live. Download it on the App Store. Get it on Google Play. Spotify Green Room, folks. It's really good stuff. You can check out all the topics that you can get into and jump into over on Spotify Green Room. And you can follow Pewter Report on there as well. Right. All right, John, Scott, they've got the Panthers looming next.
They do. They have the Panthers looming, and we'll see if Cyril Grayson can make it 3 weeks in a row. If you remember, his coming out party was kind of against the Panthers just a couple weeks ago, right? They beat the Panthers 32-6.
Crazy that he's had a 50-yard touchdown against the Saints, a 62-yard catch against the Panthers, which I thought was hilarious, by the way. Before the game against the Jets, he tweeted out, game day today, excited, all this stuff. Hopefully I don't get caught from behind like I did last week. That was so embarrassing. Like I thought he is the funniest guy. Like when he gets to the meet, he is the most low key dude. Big time. When he talks, he's just very low, soft spoken. And kind of monotone, but then he slips in jokes like consistently.
Right.
He just has this great sense of humor.
Yeah.
I think his whole story is awesome. I think
Oh, it
I think
is.
it's great.
The guy was a track star at LSU, didn't play
Yeah.
football at LSU, only played in high school. I didn't know this today until I looked it up, John. He's 28 years old. He's no spring chicken. He's no developmental young guy, sitting on the practice squad. It's just taken him a while to get to this point, and the Buccaneers have been patient with him, and it's paid off, John.
Right. So we'll see if he can keep it going. We'll be back on Wednesday. We're going to go at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, though. We're going to do some night pods this week. We'll have a Wednesday night and we'll be Thursday night as well. So 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Don't look for us at 4 because we won't be here, but 7:30 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. If you aren't, subscribe to the Pewter Report TV YouTube channel. Hit the like button on this video before you get out of here. Please hit the like button. It helps us out a ton. Helps us out so much when y'all do that. And it's so simple and easy for y'all too. That's what I love about it. And so hit that like button, subscribe to the Pewter Report TV YouTube channel as well. Let's get we're closing in on 7,000. We'd love to have 7,000 moving into the playoffs or even as the playoffs get underway. That'd be awesome. So appreciate y'all helping us get there for sure. So Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you look out for that show. We're going to be previewing the upcoming game against the Panthers, and I'm sure there will be more news at that point to talk about as well. But also look for any all 22 videos that might be dropping. We're going to try and get some. So we have some thoughts right now that we're trying to try and get out for this week, taking a look at some of the recent games and players and things like that for the Bucs. So look for the all 22 videos, tape breakdowns to be dropping as well on the Bucs this week. So it's exciting stuff. It's fun stuff as always. And we appreciate y'all. We'll catch you again next time on another edition of the Pewter Report podcast.